today, Lesson 8. As you already know, a rest is a break in the music when no notes are played. So far, you've met the semibreve, dotted minim, minim and crotchet rests. And if you want to refresh your memory about these, check back to page 19 of your Lesson 2 booklet before going any further. In this lesson, we're going to begin by taking a look at a new rest, the quaver rest. Just like the quaver note, this lasts for half a beat. The sign for a quaver rest is shown at the top of page 85 of your Lesson 8 booklet. You'll find that the use of quaver rests in music can produce some very interesting rhythms. Let's try the examples on page 85, counting the half beats as we go. In example A, the quaver rest comes between the beats, on the and part of your counting. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Example B is the reverse. Here the rest comes on the beat, so the rhythm's quite different. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now here's example C in 3/4 time. The rest comes on the second and count in each bar. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and... Example D is also in 3/4 time, but this time the rest is on the first half beat of each bar. Hear how the rhythm changes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and... Now example E in 2/4 time, with the rests at the end of the bars. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and... And finally, example F, with the rests on the first half beat of each 2-beat bar. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and... You'll need to count the beats very carefully when you begin playing the next two exercises, numbers 78 and 79. Exercise 78 is for the right hand. Watch out for the sudden change of rhythm halfway through, when a quaver rest appears on the first beat of the bar. Make sure, too, that you follow the fingering carefully. You'll find the exercise asks you to play the same notes with different fingers, to help the movement of your hand up and down the keyboard. Now here's exercise 79 for the left hand. Again, don't be caught out when the rhythm changes in the middle of the exercise. And make sure you keep a sharp eye on the fingering. Back in Lesson 2, you were introduced to the dotted minim, which is worth 3 beats. Now it's time to look at some more dotted notes. You'll find them on page 87 of your booklet. As you can see, putting a dot after any note increases its time value by a half. In this way, a semibreve lasts 4 beats, but a dotted semibreve lasts 6 beats, half as long again. Similarly, a dotted minim lasts 3 beats compared with 2 for a normal minim, and a dotted crotchet is worth 1.5 beats instead of the usual 1 beat. Now rests can be dotted in exactly the same way. For example, a dotted crotchet rest lasts 1.5 beats, and a dotted minim rest 3 beats. On the lower half of page 87, you can see the relationship between dotted notes and tied notes. As you might have already suspected, a dotted note has exactly the same time value as one note tied to another note half its length. That's to say, a dotted semibreve is the same as a semibreve tied to a minim. A dotted minim equals a minim tied to a crotchet, and a dotted crotchet lasts the same amount of time as a crotchet tied to a quaver. If you look closely at example A at the top of page 88, you can see that bar 1 and bar 3 appear slightly different. In bar 1 the F is a dotted crotchet, while in bar 3 there's an F crotchet tied to a quaver. But now listen to example A. As you'll hear, bars 1 and 3 sound identical. It's just that they've been written in different ways. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Example B shows how the dotted crotchet sounds in 3/4 time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3. Exercise 80 will give you plenty of practice at playing dotted crotchets. You'll find that the quavers in the left hand help you to count the time. In the last lesson, you practiced playing F sharp, the black key between F and G. Now we're going to meet two more sharps, C sharp, which is the black key between C and D, and G sharp, the black key between G and A. First, two exercises with C sharp in them. Don't forget that the sharp sign makes all the C's after it sharp until a bar line comes along to cancel its effect. So all the C's in exercises 81 and 82 are sharp, even though there's only one sharp sign in each bar. Here's exercise 81 for the right hand. Exercise 82 is for the left hand. In exercises 83 and 84, we meet F sharp again, along with the new note G sharp. As we've said, G sharp is the black key between G and A on your keyboard. And once again, remember that the effect of the sharp sign lasts right through the bar. All the G's in these two exercises are sharp. Exercise 83 is for the right hand. And now, exercise 84 for the left hand. Exercise 85 has a quaver rest in the right-hand part on the first and third beats of each bar. Listen to it played through. Now here's exercise 85 again, this time played a bit faster. When you practice the exercise at the slower speed a few times, try it again at this quicker pace. And in fact, you might find it helpful to apply the same principle to other exercises from now on. Start by practicing them slowly, and only work up to a faster speed when you're confident of the notes. Back to exercise 85. This lesson's practice piece is an arrangement for keyboard and backing group of the well-known theme from Swan Lake by the Russian composer Tchaikovsky. You'll notice that it includes several of the things you've been practicing in recent lessons: sharps, tied notes, and dotted notes. But there's also a chord you haven't met before, B minor. We'll be looking at this chord later in the lesson. For the moment, just take it in your stride. Here's Swan Lake with the keyboard and accompaniment. And by the way, don't forget the repeat sign that makes you play the first part of the piece twice before carrying on to the end. Now here's Swan Lake again, without the keyboard part. Now let's look in more detail at the relationship between the different notes, the intervals, which we first talked about in Lesson 4. Turn to page 94, and you'll find a table of intervals laid out for you. As you can see, it's all really quite simple and logical. So far, you've met intervals of a second between two notes next to one another, intervals of a third between a note and the next note but one, and intervals of a fourth between notes which are 3 notes apart. As you'd expect, then, the interval between two notes that are 4 notes apart is called a fifth. C to G, D to A, E to B, and so on. Then come intervals of a sixth, C to A, D to B, etc., and the intervals of a seventh, C to B, D to C, E to D, and so on. Finally, there's the interval of an eighth between a note and the next note of the same name up or down the keyboard. For example, middle C to the C above middle C. This interval is called an octave. Try playing through the series of intervals for yourself until you feel confident you can recognize and name the interval between any two notes. This knowledge of intervals will be vital to your progress later on. Your new chords for this lesson are B minor and A7. The B minor chord is made up of D, F sharp, and the root note B. Try playing it with your right hand, following the fingering in the booklet. If you find this a bit of a stretch, don't worry. Play the chord again, this time with your third finger on F sharp. Now play B minor with your left hand. A7 consists of C sharp, G, and the root note A. Here it is for the right hand, and the left. Exercise 86 gives you the chord sequence D, B minor, E, A7, and back to D. Now here's variation number 1. Variation 2. And finally the third variation, in 3/4 time, where the quaver rests on the second beat. As always, practice the exercise and the variations with your left hand as soon as you've mastered them with your right. Finally, in this lesson, on page 96, you'll find 2 exercises for the right hand that will help you develop strong, nimble fingers. You won't hear them on the tape. Simply start at your own pace and see if you can pick up speed as the notes become more familiar. In exercise 87, the idea is to move smoothly up and down the keyboard by stretching the 4th and 5th fingers apart. Follow the fingering marked above the notes carefully, and you'll soon get the idea. Exercise 88 demonstrates a different way of moving along the keyboard by playing the same notes alternately with the 3rd and 5th and with the 2nd and 4th fingers. Again, follow the fingering correctly and you'll quickly see how this works.